grafting cactus. Essentially, you can graft any kind of plants as long as the scion and the rootstock, I'm going to explain the concepts later, they are the same genus and you can graft them together. But tonight we're going to be focusing on grafting cactus, and tonight's program is going to be two parts. Part one is dealing with grafting, general kind of grafting. Part two is going to be micrografting, and I'm going to talk about part one. Part two is going to be Joseph. We have a sign-up sheet for the hands-on section after the presentation. So far, I have 28 members signed up to participate. I think we have a few extra rootstocks and scions for you guys to try on. So if anyone would like to sign up during the presentation, I'm going to pass this around and you can sign up to participate. Okay, so I'm going to get started. Are you ready? Okay. I hope you see better like this. Okay, grafting cactus. Part one is me, part two is Joseph. This is our outline for tonight. And so a lot of people ask about the purpose of grafting. Because, why don't we just grow them from seed and just let them grow on their own roots? Ideally, that's the best way. But the purpose of grafting is for cultivation or horticultural uses. Number one is for collection. So for collection, some of the plants that we bring to in cultivation, they are kind of difficult, and in the wrong climate, they are impossible to grow on their own roots. For example, Houston has 0 elevation. If you want to grow an alpine plant, or the plant that it's originated from a very cold climate, the plant is going to have a hard time rooting on their own. So in that case, grafting will give you a great success. And some of the plants are highly variegated. Like, for example, I brought this moon cactus. This is a grafted gymnoclasium on a dragon fruit rootstock. You've seen this a lot in our big box stores, and a lot of people think that they're artificial, they don't look real, and don't like them. But the truth is, the yellow part, it's a natural plant. It's just highly variegated. We call it albino. It does not have any chlorophyll, so the top is not going to be able to survive on its own if it's not grafted. So in that case, we graft it to give it a chance and to make a different specimen. So the number 2 reason is for conservation. Nowadays there are a lot of rare and endangered plants in nature, and they don't have a chance to survive if the scientist is not bringing them into cultivation and reproduce them in cultivation. So by grafting, you can actually shorten the time of the plant to reach maturation, and you can produce more seed and clones with grafting. Number 3 is for production. Grafting can increase the clones in a very short time, especially for slow growing and variegated plants. By grafting, you can have many pups, just like this one. And a solitary plant can grow into clumps. And you can also have a higher rate of getting monstroses and crests in the normal plant. And for flowering purposes, you can also get multiple petals instead of single petals. And you can also get exciting combinations of colors on the flowers too. So in general, grafting is a cultural method that fuses 2 plants of the same genus into one. This is 2-in-1. So it can be used for any plant, from ornamental plants to crops. Here are some examples of grafted plants. These are grafted cacti. These are basically crested plants that they don't flower as well. It's hard to get seeds from them. And if you want to preserve the clone of to produce the grafted feature, the crested feature, you graft them. So you can make a lot of clones, a lot of the same plants in a short time. And these are some of our favorite succulents. They don't live very well in Houston. The aeoniums. In general, the metabolism fail if we have nighttime temperature over 80 degrees Fahrenheit. But if you can find some hardy aeonium to be rootstocks, and you graft the top onto these rootstocks, they can survive in Houston.
Really?
And yep.
Outside?
What?
Outside. They don't have to be
outside. They can survive. But I have not tried this myself. I just seen this. I don't have any space to grow aeonium because in winter time they grow very fast and they're not freeze hardy. I have to bring them in. But in summer, if I don't put them in the right spot, they melt all of a sudden. So I have not tried them. But grafting is possible to make these plants live in our climate. And also, do you see these really red or some of the variegated feature on the leaves? If you graft them, they can grow a lot faster than if they're on their own roots. And also grafted euphorbias. The method of grafting euphorbia is very similar to grafting cactus. The only difference is you need to wash away the toxic juices of the plant before you fuse them together. And there's a website, it's called Euphorbia International, something like that. That's where I got this picture from. I have a link at the bottom of the slide. If you're interested, I can share it to you. And this is, you've seen this a lot. This is a grafted adenium. So by grafting on the individual branches, you can have the same plant flowering different flowers. And it is very, very pretty. This picture is from the Phoenix Bonsai Society. So there's some of the key terms that you want to understand before we go into grafting. Number one is scion. Scion means the top part of the grafted plant. And the scion carries the desired traits of the propagation. And then underneath the scion, you have the rootstock or stalk. It is the lower part of the graft that produces the root system of the grafted plant. And usually the stalk is going to be a little bit faster growing than the scion. And also the rootstock, you need something that is more adaptable to varies of climates. And then by fusing these two parts together, when you cut open the scion and the stalk, you see these structures, these ring structures in the two plants. They are called vascular ring or bundles. So these bundles of specialized tissues, they are for transporting water and nutrients between the scion and the rootstock. The vascular ring of the scion should line up with the vascular ring of the stalk as closely as possible to increase your success rate. So, and now this slide shows some commonly used rootstocks, and I put this chart together to compare the pros and cons of these plants. There are a lot of different species in the same genus that you can use, and I just basically put the name of the genus, but you are free to choose whatever is in there. Actually, basically, everything can be a rootstock, and everything can be a scion. It really depends on where you grow them and what's your objective of grafting. So for example, this Hylocereus, which is commonly known as dragon fruit, the stalk that they use in this plant. So the property of this Hylocereus is it's very inexpensive, it's easy to obtain and easy to propagate. They are fast growing. However, the cons of the Hylocereus is that they're very cold sensitive. So if you are grafting this plant and it's in winter time, it's not going to give you any new growth if you don't keep it warm enough and if you don't keep it hydrated. And also another cons of the Hylocereus is that they are relatively short-lived and they are not very stable. So that means you have to change out the stock maybe every 2 or 3 years. And then the next one is the Pereskiopsis. We have a lot here to demonstrate for you tonight on the micrografting. They are also very inexpensive and they're easy to obtain. And they are perfect for using as the micrografting stock. And they have the same property of not cold hardy like the dragon fruit, short-lived and not very stable. And they are usually used for a temporary smaller scion instead of a bigger scion. And the next group is Echinopsis. Oh, they are my favorite because they are very stable. They have the perfect rate of growth to plump up my scion. They are easy to obtain. They are everywhere. You can just pick a pop out from your Echinopsis, and there you go. You have a grafting stock, and they are quite cold hardy. They can tolerate our winter temperature unless you expose them to ice. They're fine. And what the downside is they are kind of spiny, so when you graft them, you have to take good care of your fingers. And well, that's for the smaller Echinopsis. The big Trichocereus, they can be expensive to obtain. Like you go to Home Depot and buy one, it's like $12 at least. But they're very good. They're very stable, and I like to use them as my permanent rootstocks to graft some rare species, and they can stay permanently as a rootstock, and they can eventually be buried underneath the soil and looks the entire grafting piece to look very natural. And the next of my favorite group of rootstock is Opuntia. Oh, they are just so good because of their cold hardiness. They're inexpensive, they're easy to grow. I just love them, especially if I need to graft a punna or if I need to graft a tephro cactus. They are just perfect. And you can graft many scions on one rootstock, and they look just very cool. This is an example of Opuntia, the spineless Opuntia that's native to Texas and everywhere. You can use them as a rootstock to graft many things. The only tricky part is because they have a wide opening, and when you are to graft multiple stalks, it's a little bit tricky if you have to hold them down and make sure they don't move around. So it's and also the bundle, the vascular bundle, it's not like a cereus. It has a very perfect circle bundle of vascular ring. These bundles, they are kind of irregular oval shape, and it's just weird. So you have to practice. It takes some practice to get the success of grafting on the Opuntia. And then the next of my favorite rootstock is called Heresia. Heresia Gilbertii. It's a very, very good rootstock. The downside is they're expensive and they are kind of hard to find, but they are very stable, especially if you want to graft something that has gray spine formation. They are just perfect, and they can be a very, very permanent, long-lasting rootstock too. So this one is the rootstock. It's a cool-looking cactus by itself, and although it is tropical oriented, but it has great, very, very good cold hardiness, similar to Echinopsis. And well, when we graft something on this Gilbertii, the shape of the scion it's always remain very, very perfect. It will not get overly plumped or out of shape. It's just a very natural looking thing. So I like this a lot. And the next one is Myrtillo cactus. You see the growers use Myrtillo cactus to graft a lot in Texas because it just loves our climate. The downside is it's kind of expensive and it's cold sensitive. Yes. but last year we sowed some seeds of the material cactus and we left it outdoor, and the seedlings went through our freeze. They went down to 25 Fahrenheit. They all survived. So I was surprised. So but anyhow, if you use the material cactus as a grafting stock in wintertime, you're not going to get any growth on the scion. So yeah, that's the downside. But a material cactus is very easy to graft because the rootstock is very soft and it's so easy to cut, and it's very juicy. It's very easy to attach, and I think we have the highest success rate with the grafting on the material cactus than anything else. So the next one is the Stenosaurus. It has very similar performance like a material cactus, very easy to graft and very stable, but the downside is it's kind of spiny. Some of them have long, big spines, and just you have to cut up the spines and take care of your fingers. And the next one is Echinocereus. I wouldn't use Echinocereus to graft in here in Texas because they don't love our summer very much. However, they're extremely cold hardy. So if you live in a colder place, a lot of growers like to use Echinocereus to graft. They are just so easy to grow from seed. They are everywhere, and it's just fabulous. However, in general they're spiny and not suitable for tropical climate like us. And then the next one is Selenicereus. Selenicereus is the night blooming cactus. They call it the queen of the night. They are cold tolerant, to my surprise, although they are a tropical thing. They are very hardy, they are stable, inexpensive, and they are small. So to me, smaller is easier to handle than a big one I have to chop and do that. So they are perfect for small size scion, and they, yes or no for the permanence. Well, relatively more permanent than the dragon fruit and the Pereskiopsis, but not as permanent as the Echinopsis. So I think I have two more examples here. This is a very permanent rootstock for this Pereskiopsis kochi biennis. It's a hard name for me to pronounce, but it's an Pereskiopsis on top of Echinopsis with some of the spines that cut off from the side. Another advantage for cutting off the spines is to remove the areoles, because with the areoles still attached intact on the cactus, you get pops all the time from these areoles of your rootstock, and whenever you see these pops, you need to take them off. Otherwise, they're going to outgrow the scion and taking too much energy and nutrient from feeding the scion. So cutting off the spines will prevent and the areoles will prevent the pops from forming. Okay, so there are several. I think there are 6 or 7 different grafting techniques, but tonight we are going to practice with this, the most commonly used technique, and you see these everywhere in the production greenhouses and from people's collection. So basically this is called flat or lateral graft. You just going to slide, make a flat slide of the stalk, and then you're going to bevel the edge of the stalk, because if you don't do this step, when the wound gets dried up, it will become like this, and then it's likely that your scion and the rootstock, they will push each other away. So that's why you have to do this bevel, cut it like that, and then you're going to make another thin slide to chop off the stalk, and then put the thin slice back to place, because we're going to remove it later. Now next step, you're going to obtain a scion, and then you can cut the scion, and then you use one hand to hold the scion and put it to the rootstock while removing the thin slice we just cut from the stalk. And then you have to press gently and drop the cyan and make sure that there is no air bubble in between the contact. And then lastly, you're going to use a rubber band to bend over the top to make sure that the cyan is not going to move when you move around the plant. And after a week, you can take the rubber band off and check if the graft is taking it. We're going to demonstrate how to do the first type of grafting after the entire plantation is over. So the next one is called a cleft or V graft. It looks like that. So basically, I don't see anybody's using this anymore because to me, although it creates better success, by securing the two pieces together better, but really this looks ugly. I don't like it. And I don't like it. So I have never tried this. We've never performed this, but I just want to mention that this is one way of the graft that it creates a bigger surface area of contact and easier to keep the cyan in place. Number 3 is called a side graft. The side graft, it sounds just like it is. You make some angled incisions on the side of the rootstock with the cyan wedged into the gap. And then you can use either super glue or you can use toothpicks to secure the graft together. Toothpicks, it will work too. Yeah, if you use super glue, you have to be careful that you cannot get the super glue to get in contact of the ring, otherwise they don't fuse together. Yeah. So this method is useful if you need to graft something like this. It's when the cyan is very thin and it will not just stand out. You use this kind of side graft. And then the next one is called a slab graft. You might have seen this before. It's by take a cross section of a cyan and then you just lay it flat on the rootstock. It will take it. The method, the technique that is used for the slab graft is the same as number 1, flat graft. So if you can handle flat graft, you can try the slab. They are just going to take it, no problem. And then number 5 is called aerially grafts. It is a smaller piece of like a slab graft, but and you can actually just take one aerially and graft it. On this picture, they have 2 on there. So, the reason why some people use this method of grafting is because it's kind of slow though, but it will take it and it can help you to, for example, if you need to salvage a dying plant, and these 2 areas are the only good tissue that you can graft and you can reproduce. And like another thing is if you want to isolate the variegation on this very specific point, and you don't want the green, you just want the variegated, then you isolate, for example, you isolate this aerially that it's 100% variegated and you graft it. And number 3 is if you have only one plant and you want many clones, then you do the aerially graft, and over time you will have many plants of the same clone.
Does the slab graft work for any type of cactus?
Yes.
I see it mostly done on like large columnar cactuses.
Yes, it works for any type. And actually, it's very similar to the first method. And in the first method, you see you are going to slide the cyan. Oh, sorry. You slide it into 2 pieces, and you can actually graft both the top piece and the bottom piece. Just just put it upside down.
I was going to ask you about that too.
So you can try that. It's really fun. And then number 6 is called impale grafts. This is I've never used this before, but I think it's pretty cool. It involves the use of the Pereskiopsis. You're going to shade the rootstock into a wedge, and then you're going to make a corresponding cone-shaped hole in the cyan, and you're just going to put them together. This is good for if you want to graft something that is bigger than the size of the rootstock, and you want to use Pereskiopsis to speed up with the growth. So number 7 is our micrografting, and Joseph is going to be presenting this in details later. this is very useful if you want to graft really young seedlings, and you can do it for as young as just a few days old. We tried it before. It's really amazing. It can just grow a lot, and we make one of the Pereskiopsis to flower in under 1 year. Yeah, it's really amazing. And the success rate, if your seedling is a little bit older, and you have higher success rate, and you can even try to graft it into a more permanent rootstock later on. So here are some tips for grafting. The best time for grafting is when the weather is warm and the plant is actively growing. You want to make sure that your rootstock is fully hydrated before you graft. If it's dehydrated, you have a low success rate because there's not enough juice, and the plant might not be as active. And then you want to practice your technique. The faster you can do it, the more clean your tools are, and with gentle performance, you'll get a good success rate. And also, there's some general rule of thumb is that if you have less green tissue on the scion, that means you need more green tissue on the rootstock. And also bigger rootstocks will plump up the scion faster, which is fine if you are, I used to call these lollipops. I don't like them very much. But some of these grafts, they just have to look like a lollipop because the top has no green. It's not going to make it if you don't leave any green for them at the bottom. But some of the scions, they are green, they are normal. They can perform photosynthesis for themselves. And if you want them to grow slow and nicely, you don't have to use a big rootstock unless you are a grower, you want to produce this in a short time. So, yeah. And then care for grafted plant is very essential after the graft because it can determine the success or fail for your grafted piece. You want to place the new graft in one place but out of direct sunlight with free air movement. But free air movement means that you still need to keep the grafting point with a desirable amount of humidity without it drying out, but you still want to keep a good ventilation for the entire piece. And the stock should be watered throughout, and the bands, the rubber bands left on there for about 7 days, and you can check if the graft is success. Grafted plants need to be treated in a way that suits the stock, not the scion, but the stock, because now the stock is feeding the baby. You want to make sure that your stock is happy. If the stock dies, then the scion is not going to make it. You have to redo it. So instead of withhold water from winter, for a grafted plant, you always want to give it some kind of water to keep it hydrated. Otherwise, if the stalk is completely dormant or if it's not active, the scion might have trouble. And the offsets from the stalk must be removed to stop them from taking over from the scion. One way to stop this from happening is to cut away all the areas from the stalk. Well, I just mentioned that. And so, now, do you like grafted or on their own roots? I think this is a very powerful picture because you know what? All these are grafted. They are not on their own roots. They are on the grafting stalk. Because underneath the soil, there is a 2-inch long of this, the Gilbertii, completely buried underneath the soil. I asked for this picture from one of my friends, Bert. He lives in British Columbia, which is very cold. So if he is asking his mellow cactus to live in Canada, they're not going to make it. That's why his entire mellow cactus collection is grafted, with the stalk completely buried underneath the soil. He made this graft in 2006, and then this photo was taken in March of 2021. I think in 2006 these were seedlings, and by 2021 they are already adult plants and start to produce tons of flowers and seeds from the cephalium. I think that's very cool. And I think, and he said that these plants can still stay like that for years to come. So that's really amazing. And it really changed my perspective of of grafting cactus, like from a lollipop to something it's natural and beautiful. Yes.
I just had a question. So when he grafted them originally,
Mhm.
did he bury them or did he keep them on top until the graft took?
Oh, that's a good question. I think when he first grafted it, he used about 2-inch long of the Gilbertii rootstock, and when he was grafting it, the Gilbertii was above the soil because the seedlings was still small and slow. So he left the Gilbertii rootstock to above the soil so it can do some photosynthesis for the entire graft. And then as the top grows bigger and bigger, he can eventually bury them and make them just look like natural. Yeah. I think that's all. And now it's Joseph is going to tell us about micrografting.
Sorry for my mask. I had COVID like a little over a week ago. I tested negative, but I still just want to be on the safe side, so. So I want to be as brief as possible because once I'm done, you guys will actually get to do some practice grafting. Our original plan was for you to get to do a traditional graft as well as a micrograft, but we realized that micrografts are pretty fragile immediately after you do the graft, and there was a very low likelihood that they would survive the drive home with you. So we decided just to give you the supplies and a demonstration, and you'll have to do this procedure when you get home. But I'll be as quick as I can, kind of take you through what micrografting is and what Pereskiopsis are. I want to briefly talk about the advantages and disadvantages, and as I mentioned, I want to give you a demonstration of how to actually do a micrograft on Pereskiopsis, and then you'll be able to go back to grafting on some of the larger stock that we have available. But please don't leave without taking at least, especially if you signed up, take one of the larger Pereskiopsis plants. If you didn't sign up, you might be able to grab one of the smaller ones. And we also have seedlings and soil little pots that you can take home, so you can do all this once you're. All right, so as Echo mentioned, micrografting is basically where you choose to graft a very young, tiny seedling, usually only a few weeks old. Take a good look at this picture because it's basically what you're going to be trying to recreate. The main reason why anybody does this is that you can massively speed up the growth of a seedling. The main idea is you can take a plant that might normally take 5 to 7 years to get to the point where it's flowering, and you can have it flowering in 6 months. So how is this possible? It's possible because of a plant called Pereskiopsis. Pereskiopsis is a really incredible genus. It's in the Opuntiad subfamily. The name comes from the Greek meaning similar to Pereskia, but Pereskia is actually not in Opuntioideae, so it's a bad name for the genus. But basically there's 7 or 8 species of them. The one you most often see is Spathulata, and basically it's a very fast-growing tropical cactus. You can find them in like Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and they have leaves, and they have spines, and they have glaucids. Pretty much spines and glaucids like any other Opuntiad, but somewhat unique to them is that they have leaves. They're some of the easiest plants you will ever grow, like ever. I can't find any comparison to them other than like crabgrass. I mean, it's seriously a weed. I've cut cuttings of Pereskiopsis and left them on my deck, on my wooden deck for 2 months, on just sitting on the wood. And then they manage to like turn themselves upright and try to grow and put out roots. And I'm like, there's literally nothing for them to grow into, but they're alive still after 2 months. It's hard to kill them in our climate. And that's one of the real advantages of this plant is that even if you do almost everything wrong, you're going to end up with a lot of them. The only thing that will kill them is getting too cold. That's basically it. Now, there are some serious advantages and disadvantages to micrografting on Pereskiopsis, and I already mentioned the primary advantage and the main reason that anybody does this, which is you can blow your plants up incredibly fast. This is really, really useful if you're trying, for example, to breed for certain traits, or if you're trying to grow your collection from seedlings instead of buying adult plants. Or you want to be able to produce your own seeds relatively quickly rather than waiting 5 to 7 years for your plants to be mature enough to do it. That's why I started playing around with micrografting, and that's pretty much why everybody does this. There are some other advantages. They're similar to the advantages of traditional grafting, which is that Pereskiopsis is incredibly easy to care for, and once you have a plant grafted to it, that plant is incredibly easy to care for. So for some things that are a little bit harder to grow in our climate, especially if it's like a variegated seedling or some kind of rare special thing that you're not sure if you're going to be able to manage to get it to survive, just graft it onto Pereskiopsis and it'll be fine. Downsides. Pereskiopsis is a really annoying plant to work with. It has glochids and spines, and I always stick myself with them. It also, I mentioned how you're going to end up with too much of it, and this is very true. It's going to start to, like, if you take some home and you start propagating it and you think like, oh, I'm going to make myself a little army of Pereskiopsis and graft a bunch of plants. Like, pretty soon you'll have multiple trays of this stuff, or it's going to be taking over a corner of your garden and you won't know what to do with it. Also, unlike, Echo mentioned this already, but unlike many of the other stalks, so for example, I also graft a lot with Trichocereus, and if you graft Trichocereus, like, it can stay on there for years. If you graft to a Pereskiopsis, the grafts will sometimes fail. So I actually want to pass these around. This is an old Pereskiopsis graft. I did this one over a year ago, and it's still fine, but there's a decent chance, like at some point in the next year or two, that the rootstock is going to die. And when that happens, I will have to degraft this, or else the whole thing will die as well. But let me pass a couple around just so you can see, like, up close what these really look like. This is a grafted Gymnocalacium, and this is a grafted Trichocereus.
So when the main plant, the silent dies, then you graft onto another plant?
Yeah, exactly. So when I was actually about to mention that, like, when the Pereskiopsis rootstock dies, you can or before then you can degraft the scion from Pereskiopsis. But this is the other downside to Pereskiopsis, which is, I'm just going to jump ahead and show you. What happens is the Pereskiopsis plant grows up into the scion. There's no other rootstock that does this, so at least that I know of. So if you graft on like a Trichocereus or something, you don't have this problem. Like, the graft is going to be flat. And if you ever want to degraft, you just cut straight across. But you can't do that with Pereskiopsis. Like, if you try to cut straight across here, you're going to have a little bit of dead tissue in here that's going to rot. And that's going to be a problem. So you have to cut this out. And so you can either cut like straight across here to degraft, or you can kind of cut like a little cone-shaped hole and then put like sulfur powder or lime in there to stop it from rotting. But it's kind of annoying to degraft off of Pereskiopsis. Normally, to be honest with you, I just am going to cut it straight across and graft it onto something else.
If you cut it straight across there, would the part that's remaining make a bunch of pups around the side?
I usually just throw it away, so I don't know. I think it either dies or yes.
I'm just thinking of stuff.
Sure you got it all.
Then you went above where it grew.
You can kind of see because it's a different color.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's just it's something that you can kind of learn through practice. But the degrafting of Pereskiopsis is like kind of the main downside.
Right.
The only other thing is they do sometimes become top heavy if you have like a skinny little Pereskiopsis with a giant thing on it. Then that might be another reason to degraft and go to a more permanent stock. Okay, so how do you do this? I'm going to try to show you this as clearly as I possibly can. It's going to be hard for me to do it like up in the air, but I'm going to do my best. So basically the first step, and I cannot emphasize enough how important this is
Wake up.
if you're doing multiple grafts, to sanitize your knife in between the grafts. So the first step is you need to sanitize anything you're going to be using. In this case, I'm using this little box cutter. So we'll do that.
What is that, alcohol?
This is rubbing alcohol. That'll work great to make sure this is clean. All right, so then we're going to take our rootstock. Here's our Pereskiopsis, and we want to choose a part of it that is thick. So we don't want to try to graft to like a skinny little thing like this. That's never going to work. We want to graft onto a thick part of the plant like this. So we're going to cut into the thick part of the plant. I'm going to get rid of this. And if you wanted to grow a new plant, you could make like 2 out of this. Let's go like here. This is going to be hard to cut because it's old. All right. So it's kind of a rough cut. But you can see that I kind of mangled it. But I cut it across there, and this is rough, and that doesn't look very good. So I'm going to try to make this a little bit straighter. All right, this is way better. So now we have a nice flat top across that we can put our scion onto. So now we get a little scion seedling. These are stenocacti that I've been growing. And I should dig it out, but I'm just going to rip it out. It doesn't really matter. And so here's the seedling. These are like a few months old, but you could do it if it were a few weeks old. These are actually already getting too big. And we're going to cut off its roots. So I'm cutting it in half. Just removed its roots. And we're going to take the top, and we're just going to stick it on there. All right, and it doesn't want to stay because it's a little too big. Oh no. You try not to do what I'm doing. You don't want to like mangle it after you. There you go. It's done. I don't know if it's going to stay. We'll see. So, all right. So, the good thing is the sap, Pereskiopsis sap is actually sticky. So once you make this cut and press it on there, it should stay. Maybe. Now, what I like to do, this is optional, but it is a nice little thing, is to take some plastic wrap. You can also use a little plastic bag for this, like one of those tiny little seed bag type things. I'm just going to use a little square of plastic wrap. This may not be big enough. Let me get a little bigger piece. And you're going to take this plastic wrap. I hope I don't dislodge it now. Put it over there and rubber band it on. So, oh no, it moved. Well, let's imagine that that did not happen, okay? And it's still lodged on there perfectly. There we go, like that, like nothing ever happened. So you just leave it kind of like this. And you want to keep this humid and out of direct sun for about a week. Right? And probably the first one you do, you'll mangle it like I did, and you'll push it around all over the place, and it'll die. But the next one that you do, it'll probably survive. What you want to aim for being slightly off center on the vascular bundle. So you don't want the vascular bundles to be perfectly lined up, but it doesn't really matter. You're not going to have enough precision anyway, so just put it on there. And I'll be honest with you, the only reason that these fail for me typically is because I am not gentle with them enough in the first week. Like, I might bump them, or I might just like leave them out somewhere where they get direct sun and forget that I left a tray somewhere in the late afternoon. The direct sun hits the scions and it dries them out. Like, so as long as you're a little bit attentive in the first week or so and gentle with them and take good care of them, this is a really easy thing to do. And then what's honestly really fun is once your plant is grafted, Pereskiopsis pushes the scion so fast that you can see it change every single day. Like, it becomes to the point where it's growing so quickly that you can go out and check on it every morning and it will look a little bigger. So it's really fun to just play around with at least a little bit, to watch, like, especially if you have something like an Areocarpus, or if you try to grow Copiopoas from seed and you've gotten frustrated because of how slow they are, like, do this and you will be incredibly excited to watch your stuff be like flowering within a few months. So that's my procedure, and I strongly encourage you to try this out. And I will be passing around the supplies, I think, as we're doing the grafting. I don't know how Echo wants to run. Echo, how do you want to do the actual like grafting portion?
So